Hi, this is Hannah. I'll be your guide today. This video will train you on how to get better and more realistic sounding voices out of text-to-speech AI systems. The system we're using in this video is ElevenLabs. I highly recommend it. I think the voices are pretty darn good out of the box. With that said, let's talk about how to get even better results. The first step is pick an AI voice that you love. It will not get better with use, so do not delude yourself. Take time to explore the voice libraries and find a voice that really resonates with you and your personality. This step is really important because you're going to be hearing this voice a lot. Continuing on. Before you start entering your text, first stop and think about how you really want the words to sound. What words do you want to emphasize? Where do you want pauses? It's good to start with a plan of how you want the output to sound before you start entering the text. Now that you have your plan, let's look at how you can emphasize certain words. There are two easy techniques you can use. First, you can add emphasis to a word by putting quotes around the word. Don't worry about using punctuation in a weird way. No one's going to see it. The second way to add emphasis is writing the word in all caps. You don't need to be concerned that writing in all caps will sound like yelling. It won't. The next thing you need to consider is the length of a single sentence. If you have a particularly long sentence, you may want to break it up into smaller sentences. Sometimes, when the AI is presented with a really long sentence, it can sound like it's running out of air toward the end of the sentence. You may be asking, why on earth does it do this? These models were trained on real human voices and work with the learning data they've been presented. I'm already seeing improvements in this area, so I'm sure in the next year these smaller issues will be addressed. Meanwhile, use shorter sentences. All right, on to the next. If you want your AI to pause or slow down, you can do this by adding a comma, an ellipse, or a double dash. You can also start a new paragraph if you're wanting a more significant pause in between sentences or topics. When it comes to titles, topics, and concepts, sometimes AI can struggle to understand when words need to be grouped together. This is particularly obvious when using industry terms or business jargon that the model may not have been trained on. There are three ways that you can solve this problem. One is to capitalize each word, to indicate that it is a proper noun or similar. Next is to put quotes around the group of words so it knows it's a single group of words to be said together. And lastly, you can use dashes to hold the words together. Currently, AI is not able to recognize your typical numbered or bulleted list. So if you're cutting and pasting one of these lists into AI, it may struggle. There are two ways to address this. When formatting a bulleted list, make sure the sentence leading up to the list has a colon at the end of it. Then each item in the list has its own line with a comma at the end. The last item on the list has a comma and an and, followed by the final item on the list with a period at the end. If you don't put the period at the end, and you have content below the bulleted list, it will create a run-on sentence. Second, to format a numbered list, you start in a similar manner as the first example. Then, to get the AI to say the number, you actually need to write the number out. You can also enter your list in sentence format. But be careful that your sentence doesn't become too long and trigger the running out of breath phenomenon. As you work with text-to-speech, you'll find there are words or acronyms that the AI does not know. You may need to give it a hand when it comes to acronyms and business jargon. The easiest way to fix this issue is to write it out phonetically for the AI to interpret. Let's try this with the example NAACP.
NAACP, NIACP, NAACP.
Text-to-speech AI may also struggle with special characters such as ampersands or dollar signs. Since the models are trained on human language and ampersands and dollar signs are actually special characters, they don't always interpret these symbols correctly. On occasion, special characters may make your AI sound like it's having a stroke. If this happens, just remove the special character and replace it with the word instead. This is what it sounds like when AI has a stroke.
First, operational savings are measured in increments of $100,000, with significant savings being over $500,000. Second, revenue impact, which is considered high if the increase is more than 10 million. And third, for net new certifications, we have a range from fewer than 100 to greater than 1,000. This financial and performance metrics allow us to objectively evaluate the potential benefits of each request.
So, when you input your text, You may need to write out the word dollar or the word and to make sure that the AI speaks it correctly. Now let's bring all this together by sharing two examples. Example 1 is text cut and pasted directly into the text-to-speech tool. And the second example is using all the techniques described in this training. Have a listen.
It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. It is rather for us to be here, dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause, for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
I think the second one is a big improvement, so be creative and mess around with these techniques and see what you get. My final note is to encourage you to give your audio files a meaningful name. The file names coming directly out of the systems can be long and meaningless. My recommendation is to use a few meaningful words from your recording, such as the topic of the recording or the first few words or last few words of the recording. AI is evolving fast, and so is Medusas. If we missed something or got something wrong, let us know. For more AI and business resources, visit us at medusas.org.